Chapter 1165, The Grand Lineup. As Ammon spoke, the transparent tentacles covered with mysterious patterns extended out from the gigantic vortex behind his back, and they wrapped around his many different spirit body threads. In the blink of an eye, the illusory black threads were lifted up without any resistance. And with that, one strange monster after another was hoisted up in the air, like ham waiting to be dry-aged. The spirit body threads beside Ammon were all stolen by him at some point in time. While Zeratul launched his attack, his other slippery tentacle kept extending into the void, attempting to pull something back. In just a few seconds, a figure quickly appeared. He had long chestnut-colored curly hair, blue eyes, high nose bridge, thin lips, and a very beautifully manicured mustache. He wore a dark red coat with rusted golden threads. It was none other than the former Emperor of Intis, Rosel Gustav. The moment this knowledge emperor stepped into the real world, he looked down at the gigantified Ammon, and complicated and illusory symbols instantly formed in his eyes. He wasn't worried that Ammon would steal his attack at all, because he had prepared an extremely large amount of useless miscellaneous knowledge. Be it the forceful injection or Ammon's theft of it, he could achieve the goal of blowing up the other party's mind. Just as Emperor Rosel's projection was fully formed, another figure appeared from Zeratul's transparent tentacles. The figure had a young face, but his long hair was already half-white, pulled back and flailing in the air. In the darkness, half of it was hidden and the other was prominent. This was an angel that Klein didn't know. He looked like a man with eyes that were dark and filled with the vicissitudes of life. His facial features were considered pretty good, but there was a bunch of thick, short black hair on his cheeks. He emitted the feeling that he was both old and youthful, both rational and crazy. He immediately transformed into a cluster of squirming worms that extended out transparent, smooth tentacles akin to Zeratul's projection. Clearly, this was also an angel from the seer pathway. At that moment, Klein didn't even dare to look straight at the situation occurring in midair. However, when his spiritual perception triggered, he had already sensed something familiar. The second angel that was summoned by Zeratul was the son of an ancient god, the original ancestor of the Antigonus family. This was the historical projection, him before he became the half-fool. Clearly, Zeratul had made sufficient preparations in this period of time. As Antigonus displayed his complete mythical creature form, the surrounding environment changed once again. The darkness became even darker, as though it had a life of its own as it surged towards the massive manifestation of the classic black-robed, pointy-hatted, and monocled Ammon. In the area enveloped by darkness, all the monsters instantly turned into marionettes. Antigonus seemed to have moved a portion of the ancient divine kingdom from his memories into the real world, so as to separate Ammon from Klein. This was also a miracle. When the miracle happened, Zeratul's transparent tentacles pulled out a third projection from the fog of history. This was a knight in full black armor. He was a demigod from the fourth epic's Solomon Empire and had not left an illustrious name in history. However, he had another identity. He was a member of the Red of War army, and the leader of this army was King of Angels Medici. In this division, every member could connect with Red Angel Medici's mind and become one. In other words, if Medici could converge their powers, then they too could also transmit their own powers to the collective pool. The powers of a scholar of your powers couldn't summon anything associated with the uniqueness. Even if they were to raise their sequence and receive a qualitative change, it remained the same. However, there was no doubt that seers would seek ways to push the envelope by attempting to bypass the restrictions and obtain help from the uniqueness to a certain extent. Klein had summoned the goddess's descent vessel to accomplish this point, while Zeratul summoned a powerhouse of the Red of War army. At this moment, that projection was equivalent to a portion of Medici. The knight in black armor stepped onto the battlefield. He scanned the battlefield in a sluggish manner before laughing out loud. "Yo, Lil Raven, have those feathers I burnt recovered?" Due to the fact that his historical projection had summoned another 3 angel-level historical projections, Klein suspected that he couldn't maintain it for 10 seconds. If it wasn't for this change, then he would most likely have felt that he had found a way to indefinitely increase his combat strength. That was to summon 2 angels and 1 projection of himself every time. Then, he could use his projection to summon 2 angels and himself again. If this continued, he would have an infinite number of projections available. At that moment, the ascetic leader of the Church of Evernight, Ariana's body faded and entered a concealed state. Following that, she suddenly appeared behind the gigantified Ammon, slashing out with the bone sword that was covered in strange patterns. Taking advantage of the opportunity when Ammon was being attacked by the 5 angel projections attack, Klein kept converting monsters into his marionettes, getting them to aim at him. He opened his mouth and let out a bang. Air cannons whistled towards him. At the same time, Klein stretched out his hand and easily took out a flaring sun charm that had already been activated and was just short of releasing its effects. He didn't believe that he would be able to survive such repeated attacks. Amidst the booms, Klein suddenly heard a tick-tock noise. The entire world seemed to stop for a moment before it returned to normal. Following that, he saw a huge hole in the dark sky. A ray of pure hot sunlight shone in and lit a golden charm. It was the flaring sun charm. It had turned into a huge ball of light that was engulfed by countless balls of flames. However, the targeted attack was Klein. It had made an error and instead wrapped around the red of War Demigod. Meanwhile, the vast amount of knowledge that Roselle Gustav had injected, the miracle created by Antigonus, the destructive sword which Ariana had swung out, the transparent tentacles that Zeratul extended, they all pointed at the same target in an erroneous manner: Medici's black-armored subordinate. At some point, the projection that consisted of a part of Medici's will first suffered an explosion in his mind. Even his instinctive reaction seemed to have disappeared. Then, he was assaulted by the barrage of heavy attacks and quickly dissipated in midair. Wearing a pointed hat and a classical mage robe, it was unknown when Ammon had returned to the size of a human and landed at the bottom of the battlefield. He raised his right hand and adjusted the crystal monocle as a beam of light lit up. Behind his back, the ancient mottled clock phantom appeared once again. The longest second hand quickly spun half around at an extraordinary speed. It took less than a second, but everything on the desolate moors seemed to have lost 10 to 20 seconds. The projection of Antigonus's historical projection disappeared. Following that, Roselle's historical projection faded away. Finally, it was the historical projections of Zeratul and Ariana. The amount of time they could be maintained had been stolen. Klein, who was just about to commit suicide for the 3rd time, couldn't believe his eyes. He had expected Blasphemer Ammon to resolve the 5 angel projections. After all, they were merely projections. A projection was much weaker than the actual body. However, Klein never expected the other party to be so casual about it that he didn't even have a chance to commit suicide. He had used his trump card in exchange for such an outcome. It was inevitable for him to feel disheartened and despair. Ammon nudged his monocle and took a step forward to appear in front of him. He smiled. If they were all there, true bodies, it would indeed be more troublesome. However, the historical void projection has a very huge flaw, and grasping the problem of something is what I'm best at. Looking at this angel of time, whose smile remained the same while his expression was one of delight, as though he hadn't been in a difficult situation just now, Klein's heart slowly sank, as if he had fallen into an abyss. His spiritual perception was triggered, as scenes quickly flashed through his mind. After entering the forsaken land of the gods, Ammon changed his clothes, going from a dark-colored jacket, trousers, and black top hat that met the aesthetic standards of modern times to a classic mage's robe and a pointed hat. After that, he suggested a game of escaping and obstructing. He appeared extremely confident and wasn't worried about any mishaps. As his thoughts raced, Klein's throat turned dry and he said in a low and hoarse voice, "You are the true body. After entering the forsaken land of the gods, your true body merged with your avatar." He seriously suspected that the person in front of him was Ammon's true body, the true blasphemer, the whole king of angels. The corners of the monocled Ammon's mouth curled up bit by bit. This is very interesting, isn't it? The expression on your face after knowing the truth is what I wanted to see in this game. He had clearly admitted that he was the main body. He was born accommodating the uniqueness of the Marauder pathway. He was peerless amongst the ranks of those beneath that of deities. This meant that, unless a true deity descended, no matter how hard Klein struggled, he wouldn't be able to escape from Ammon's hands. And this was the forsaken land of the gods. The only active deity was the true creator, and he wasn't too interested in Sephra Castle. Although he had suspected that the Ammon beside him had swapped with his actual body, Klein, who had experienced countless instances of hope, only to have them destroyed, experienced what was the ultimate sense of despair when he was truly certain of it. If it wasn't for the fact that the Tarot Club involved Miss Justice, Leonard, and company, as well as how he knew that Ammon was best at deception, he would have admitted defeat and expressed his willingness to become his blessed. Isn't it normal to join the ranks of the opponents if you can't beat them? As he lampooned, a thought suddenly flashed through his mind. He recalled the words that Ammon had previously said. This. His eyes lit up, and he completely calmed down. Looking at Ammon, he leisurely stretched his body and said with a smile, "Kill me."